Alright, you guys, so while I finish putting these boots on, I was just going to tell you about how I'm going to ride today. So, I have two polar opposite horses. And I say that meaning that their characteristics are polar opposites, and so are their size. Anyways, so Tough Man here, he's the one I'm putting these boots on. He's 16, and he is very much a pleaser. He wants to please you in every way and shape that he can. The problem sometimes is that his feet move faster than his mind can think. And sometimes they'll move faster than what I can think. So he and I focus a lot on keeping his feet busy and on me. So when I first sit down to get on him, the first thing we start off doing is things that he's super comfortable with and that I know I can keep his attention with, and I can keep him focused on me. So we actually start out doing something called bending and flexing. He is a very loose horse in the manner of he's very giving, he's very soft. So when I first get on him, I first off keep my eyes forward and looking where I want him to go. If my eyes and my mind wanders, he wanders. So if you have a horse that's super forward motion, start off by giving them something to do almost immediately. Set you up some cones or some boards or some barrels, or focus on your trees, or use a fence line, and go ahead and get their feet and get their mind. So bending and flexing is basically where you would use the right foot, right hand, and you would ask them simply to flex their nose around to you and kind of break their body at the rib cage. Okay, so they just kind of flex into a half circle. And as soon as you get that release, you let go and you focus on trying the other side. So you go back and forth. You bend and flex going across the arena. So it looks like a zigzag. Or across the pasture wherever you're riding. Today I'm riding in the pasture. And I get his feet, right? So then once I know that he's relaxed with me, I can tell he's relaxed when he gives me a really good whoa. And his head is down. And he backs softly. Then I know we're ready to go into a trot. We don't trot unless we've got a nice whoa and a nice back. And I know that kind of sounds crazy for a horse that's finished in the barrel pattern and his age. But it's just the best way to warm him up and get on him and warm him up. So once I start out into a trot, again, I go right into getting his feet and getting his mind. I don't do the bending and flexing when I first start off at a trot. Most of the time I start with a nice circle. I don't make it too small. I'm not trying to overwork his body. I'm still loosening him up at this point and warming him up. So I start with a larger circle, maybe even larger eights. So in my case, I use two trees. I'm out here in the pasture. So I've got these two trees that I use. So I make a nice circle one way and a nice circle the other. Nice circle one way and nice circle the other. Once I know that transition between those two circles, so like just think about drawing an 8 on a piece of paper. The transition between the two circles, when that's really smooth and he's not trying to pull through me and canter, and he's not pushing his body forward, there's not forward motion, it's nice and slow and collected, and I've got his nose, again, because we've already bend and flexed in the warm up at the walk. So when I've got his nose in that circle and he's nice and soft and collected underneath me, then we go to a canter. Okay, so you build those things up slowly. When you have a pleaser horse that has plenty of motor and wants to push forward and needs something to focus on, give them something to focus on. Because otherwise what happens is you sit down and in the first 10 minutes you end up fighting with each other. They're going to argue with you because you just want to walk around for a minute and, look at the trees and the stars and the birds and all the things. But your horse is ready to go to work for you because he's a pleaser. Okay, so if you have a pleaser horse and you're struggling in those first 15 minutes of the ride and it feels like you're just fighting with that horse and then it takes forever to get them collected and underneath you, find something to focus their feet on in the first 5 seconds of that ride. Okay, so next off, polar opposite. She is a pleaser. There's not a lot of gas pedal there, okay? It does not take a lot to collect her. It actually takes more to get her soft. So when I sit down on her, I think about my objective for that day is to get her to try to be soft. When I feel that she is trying, because remember folks, they don't speak English, okay? They only know pressure release. You apply pressure, they release how they think they should, okay? So we can't get upset with them if we are, 10 minutes into a ride and they're not softening up for us, they're arguing with us. Okay, did you release that pressure as soon as they gave, right? Because for a horse that has less forward motion, a horse that has a little less energy and a little more lazy, right? And I use that term slightly because she's still a 3D mare. She's still fabulous. She'll still go when you smooch, but she would much rather walk and much rather slow trot. He's trying to run out from underneath you in a trot, and she's, much rather just go nice and easy. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to make sure that you reward her for every try. Okay. The other thing I do with a horse that is slower and a little bit more lazy, when I ask them for gear, I don't continually smooch and kick with my feet. I've asked her for a trot. She goes up into that trot. I expect her to stay at that trot. The second she breaks down out of that trot, I get on her pretty good, right? I give her a good pop with both feet and a big smooch. If she goes up into a canter, that's okay. I'll let that canter for just a second. Then I ease her back to that trot. I don't get upset with her for going into that canter, but I expect her to take responsibility for her own feet. Okay, because that's going to help her from being lazy and the other parts of our work. So when we're loping eights and we're doing flying lead changes, or we're doing side passing, or we're doing spins, or we're working the barrel pattern, we're working the pole pattern, I expect her to stay in the gait that I put her in unless I ask her to slow down. Okay. So in order to do that, you have to make them take responsibility for their own feet. So if you have more of a push style horse and you're struggling to keep that horse moving forward, make sure that you're not consistently asking, right? So when I get on her and we're doing our walking, the first thing we do is we go to find something where I can soften her up a bit. So maybe it's going up and down a hill. So I'm warming her body up a little bit. I'm kind of asking her to wake up for me. And then I find some maybe trees to just kind of weave around to give her something to focus on. And then 10 or so minutes into that walk, we bump up into that trot. Again, when I ask her for that trot, I expect her to stay in that trot unless I ask her to slow down, right? So the second she slows down into a walk, I put that energy right on her right then, right? And she goes, sometimes she bumps up into a canter, and like I said, that's okay. She's responding. We reward the response. So I'm not going to get upset with her if she bursts up into a canter because I've really given her energy, right? I'm like, move your feet. So what happens there is, if you're a barrel racer like I am, that translates into your barrel pattern. And here's how. So let's say you're coming up into the gate, you're heading to your first barrel, and it's a big pin. So let's say you've got a real big stretch between that first and second barrel. So you get up and around that first barrel and you're like, man, she's running, she's working hard for me. But then it's a stretch to that second. So the first felt great, and you feel her start to lose momentum heading into that second barrel. So by making her take responsibility for her own feet in our slow work, the second I smooch or give a little gouge going to that second, she's like, oh, yes, I'm supposed to move my feet. I make her take responsibility for it immediately, and I do not let her slow down. My dog's trying to knock my phone over. Don't do that, dude. So anyways, so that's kind of just some tips I have for, when you've got the polar opposite horses, when you've got one that's, all motor and really forward, you want them to collect and be soft. You want to have their mind and have their feet. And you'll find, like I was saying with his whoa and his back, you'll find one thing that gives you that instant cue that they're now soft and you can move on, right? Don't overwork that slow work, when it comes to, your horse that's got a lot of motor. And then again, for, your slower, lazier horse, make sure that you're making them take responsibility for their own feet. And in her case, like I said, she tends to be a little bit heavier and a little bit harder to get to soften up. So we work on softening, we work on side passing and spinning, and we work on her taking responsibility for it. So every now and then she gets a little more spur than the gelding does. My gelding doesn't really need spurs, but let me touch on that really fast, and then we're going to end this video because I'm going to go jump on and ride, and I don't have a way to take you guys with me. I will soon, but I want to touch on spurs for just a minute. So I went to Road to the Horse in Kentucky this last year. I went with an amazing friend and client of mine. And I was so blessed to get to go on that trip because I was really able to take a lot home from that. And when you're able to go on trips like that and go see other trainers and just other people ride, go take notes, watch things, pay attention to the way horses react to the different things that those trainers do, things that you may not do. And one thing that one of the trainers said was, he said, have you ever pulled out your smartphone and tried to type with your knuckles or with your palm, right? So like put three knuckles together. Okay, that's about the width of your heel on your boot. Have you ever tried to type with three knuckles? No, you type with one finger, right? You scroll with one finger. The point he was making was the size of the back of your foot is more blunt, right? But that spur actually allows you to be softer, right? Because if you're using three knuckles, you really gotta work around on that phone to get there, right? You gotta focus. But if you've got that one finger, you can be a lot softer, right? So a soft spur allows you to be able to just touch instead of gouging your feet. And the softer we can be, the softer that horse is and the more responsive that horse becomes. So just like saying take responsibility for her own feet, and just like saying softening him up and making sure he's with me and he's collected, a spur is an amazing tool if you learn how to use it. So if you don't overuse a spur and you're not turning your toes out and just ramming them every 5 seconds, don't do that. Be soft and your horse will be soft with you. So anyways, I hope these tips have helped you today. If you have one of the types of 2 horses here, I hope that this information helped you along. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and share to your friends. And whatever you do today, spend some time with your horse. Bye, y'all.